"Pick any bride for free." The king laughed. "I'll take the virgin peasant," said the prince. The king's jest shakes the palace walls, laughter echoing beneath glittering chandeliers. But when the prince points not to a duchess, not to a lady of rank, but to a trembling peasant girl carrying bread, the hall falls silent. The courtiers sneer, the king smirks, and the girl's life changes in an instant. What began as a cruel joke now burns into a dangerous truth, because the prince means it. He'll fight for her honor against his father's fury, against the whispers of the court, against secrets buried in her family's past. But scandal spreads like wildfire, and one revelation threatens to destroy not just her, but the crown itself. Will their love defy the king's command, or be crushed beneath the weight of the throne? Drop a comment below and share which part of the world you're tuning in from today. If you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to subscribe for more. In the grand hall of the royal palace of Arenthia, hundreds of beeswax candles flickered in crystal chandeliers, casting dancing shadows across marble floors polished to mirror shine. The midsummer evening air hung heavy with perfume and the sweet notes of violins as masked nobles twirled and laughed beneath gilded ceilings. King Ulrich sprawled on his ornate throne, his face flushed from too much wine. His thick fingers drummed against the golden armrest as he watched the revelry with increasingly glazed eyes. The king's elaborate lion mask sat askew, revealing his contemptuous smile as he observed the dancers. "Silence," he suddenly bellowed, raising his jeweled goblet. The music stuttered to a halt. Dancers froze mid-step, their fancy masks turning toward the throne. "I feel generous tonight," the king's words slurred slightly. "So generous that I shall make a proclamation. My son," he gestured sloppily toward Prince Adrian, who stood rigid beside the throne. "My dear boy may choose any bride he wishes. Any lady here tonight, at no cost to our treasury." He laughed deeply at his own jest. Titters of excitement rippled through the crowd. Ladies hurriedly adjusted their masks and smoothed their silk skirts. Every noble family had brought their eligible daughters tonight, hoping to catch the prince's eye. Now they practically preened, certain one of their own would be chosen. Prince Adrian remained still, his simple black mask revealing only his tightly drawn mouth. Unlike his father's gaudy attire, he wore an elegant but understated dark blue coat with silver buttons. His hands were clasped behind his back as he surveyed the hopeful faces before him. Through the crowd moved Elena, the baker's daughter, carefully balancing a heavy tray of fresh bread. She had been pressed into service for the evening. When several regular servants fell ill, her plain brown dress marked her clearly as a servant among the riot of silk and jewels. Though she kept her eyes downcast, she couldn't help admiring the beautiful gowns that rustled past her. She paused near a cluster of young nobles, offering the bread tray with a careful curtsy. As she straightened, she felt eyes upon her and glanced up to meet the heated gaze of Lord Blackthorn. The corpulent noble's pig-faced mask did little to hide his lecherous expression as he elbowed his companion. "Pretty little morsel, that one," he said loudly enough for Elena to hear. "I think I'll have her brought to my chambers later. These common girls know better than to refuse a lord's summons." His friend laughed coarsely. Elena's cheeks burned as she tried to slip away, but Lord Blackthorn's meaty hand shot out to grab her wrist. "Don't run off so quickly, sweet thing. I wasn't finished looking at you. Release her." The quiet command cut through the surrounding chatter. Prince Adrian had descended from the dais, and now stood before them, his presence commanding instant attention. Lord Blackthorn dropped Elena's wrist as if burned. "Your Highness, we were just having a bit of sport." "Sport?" Adrian's voice was soft but carried clearly. "Is that what you call threatening assault upon an innocent girl?" His eyes, visible through his mask, were cold with anger. The king's raucous voice interrupted from his throne. "Well, boy, have you made your choice? The ladies are waiting." More drunken laughter followed. Adrian turned slowly, his gaze sweeping the hall before returning to Elena, who stood frozen with her tray. In that moment, he saw not just a servant girl, but a soul as pure as morning light. He had noticed her before, sharing her bread with hungry children in the castle courtyard, singing hymns softly as she worked. Now she stood trembling before Lord Blackthorn's cruel intentions. The prince's voice rang out clear and steady. "I have made my choice, father. I'll take the virgin peasant." A shocked gasp rippled through the assembly. Elena's bread tray slipped from nerveless fingers, the loaves scattering across the marble floor. Behind their masks, noble faces registered disbelief and outrage. Several ladies swooned dramatically into their mother's arms. King Ulrich's laughter boomed louder than ever. "Oh, excellent jest, my boy. I didn't think you had such humor in you." He wiped tears of mirth from his eyes. Very good indeed. Now choose your real bride and let's be done with it." But Adrian didn't laugh. He stood straight and proud, his quiet dignity a rebuke to the mockery around him. "I have made my choice, father, the baker's daughter, Elena." The king's laughter died abruptly. His face, what was visible beneath the crooked mask, turned an alarming shade of purple. But before he could explode, a courtier whispered urgently in his ear. After a moment, the king's expression shifted to calculated amusement. Of course," he said with exaggerated joviality. "The night is young, and my son wishes to extend the jest. Very well, take your little baker girl. We shall all enjoy the game." He waved a dismissive hand and turned to demand more wine. Elena felt the world spinning around her. Gentle hands grasped her elbows as two ladies' maids appeared beside her, curtsying to the prince before leading her away. She caught a glimpse of Adrian's face as she was guided from the hall. His eyes met hers briefly, filled with something that might have been reassurance or regret. The maids hustled her through torchlit corridors, their shoes clicking against stone floors. Elena's mind whirled with questions she dared not ask. Was this truly happening? Was it some cruel joke that would end with her humiliation? Or worse, was she now in even greater danger? They arrived at a small antechamber, its walls hung with tapestries depicting hunting scenes. A single candle burned in a silver holder, casting soft light over the simple wooden chairs and table. The maid seated her carefully, as if she might shatter. "Wait here, miss," one said kindly. "Someone will come for you soon." They departed, leaving Elena alone with her racing thoughts. She sat very still, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. The fabric of her plain dress felt rough against her palms, a reminder that she didn't belong in this world of silk and jewels. Through the thick stone walls, she could faintly hear the music resuming in the great hall, the celebration continuing as if nothing extraordinary had occurred. But something extraordinary had happened. A prince had chosen her, Elena, the baker's daughter, in front of the entire court. Whether as jest or protection or something else entirely, she couldn't fathom. Her father's warnings echoed in her memory. "Keep your head down, child, don't draw attention. The nobles' games are not for the likes of us." Now she sat in a castle antechamber, trembling like a sparrow in a hawk's shadow, wondering if she was ruined or saved. The prince's quiet strength, when he faced Lord Blackthorn, gave her hope, but the king's mocking laughter and the noble's shocked outrage filled her with dread. Elena closed her eyes and did what she had always done in times of trouble. She prayed. The familiar words of her childhood prayers brought some comfort, though they provided no answers. When she opened her eyes, the candle had burned lower, its flame reflecting in the polished surface of the table before her. She was still alone, still waiting, still caught between two worlds. The baker's daughter, who smelled of fresh bread and early morning fires, now entangled in the dangerous games of princes and kings. Whether this night would end in triumph or tragedy, only time would tell. For now, she could only sit in this quiet room, her heart beating like a frightened bird's, while somewhere above her head the masked revelry continued, and her fate hung suspended between what was and what might be. The palace kitchen stirred to life as dawn's first light crept through the narrow windows. While most servants still slumbered in their quarters, Elena stood alone at the massive wooden preparation table, her hands deep in bread dough. She had barely slept, tossing and turning on her narrow cot as memories of the previous night's events played over and over in her mind. The familiar motions of kneading brought some comfort. Fold, press, turn, fold, press, turn. The rhythm was as natural as breathing, learned at her father's side since she could barely reach the table. The sweet, yeasty scent of the dough filled her nostrils, mingling with the warmth from the already hot ovens. Her arms ached pleasantly from the work, and flour dusted her plain brown dress. This early morning solitude was usually her favorite time, but today her thoughts would not quiet. Every shadow made her start, wondering if Lord Blackthorn would appear to claim what he believed was his right. Every footstep in the corridor made her heart race, fearing the king's guards coming to drag her away for daring to rise. above her station. The sound of boots on stone made her freeze. These steps were different, purposeful, but quiet, not the heavy tread of guards or the shuffling of servants. Elena held her breath as a figure appeared in the kitchen doorway. Prince Adrian stood there, dressed simply in a brown wool coat and leather boots that would not have looked out of place on a merchant's son. Without his mask and court finery, he looked younger, more human. His dark hair was slightly tousled, as if he too had passed a sleepless night. "Your Highness." Elena dropped into a deep curtsy, her flower-covered hands leaving white prints on her skirt. I should not be alone with you. It isn't proper." "Please," Adrian said softly, glancing behind him before stepping fully into the kitchen. "No formality. Not here. I had to speak with you privately, before the palace awakens." Elena straightened, but kept her eyes lowered, her hands clutched together. "If anyone sees you here, they will think I am checking on the morning's bread, as I have done before." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "The kitchen staff know I sometimes visit when I tire of sugared delicacies and crave honest fare." He moved closer, though still keeping a respectful distance. "Elena, I must explain about last night. You must know I did not act in jest or mockery." She dared to look up then, meeting his earnest gaze. "My lord, why did you do it? Surely you have condemned yourself to ridicule, and me too." She couldn't finish the thought. "To Lord Blackthorn's predations." Adrian's voice hardened slightly. "That is precisely what I sought to prevent. I have watched him destroy too many innocent lives with his so-called rights over the servants. When I saw him target you," he shook his head, "I could not stand idle, not again. But the king's offer was meant as entertainment," Elena said. "A chance for you to choose among the noble ladies. Instead, you chose me." The last word came out barely, above a whisper. Adrian took another step forward, his expression intense. "Listen carefully. What I did was not only to protect you from Blackthorn. I have noticed you before your kindness to the children in the courtyard, the way you share your bread with those in need, how you sing hymns while you work. Your nobility of spirit shames many who wear silk and jewels." Elena felt her cheeks warm at his words. "You are too kind, my lord. But I am just a baker's daughter. If the king decides to annul your choice, I will be branded as the peasant who dared to reach above her station. I will be cast out, my family disgraced." Her voice trembled slightly. "Even now, I don't know if I am ruined or saved." "You are saved," Adrian said firmly. "I swear it. I will not allow you to be shamed or harmed. But more than that," he glanced around again before lowering his voice, "there may be a way to make last night's declaration binding." Elena's eyes widened. "Binding? But how?" "The Archbishop," Adrian explained. "If we can secure his blessing before my father sobers enough to rescind his proclamation, well, even the king cannot easily undo a marriage blessed by the church." Elena's hands flew to her throat, where her wooden cross hung on a simple cord. "Marriage? My lord, you cannot mean." "I do mean it." Adrian's voice was gentle but determined. "The Archbishop is a good man who values virtue above rank. If he sees what I see in you, the court would never accept it," Elena whispered. "They would scorn you. And me. They would make my life unbearable." "Some would try," Adrian acknowledged, "but others would follow where I lead. Change must start somewhere. Elena, why not with us?" Elena stared at him, all warring with terror in her heart. His words sparked something dangerous hope. Yet the thought of facing those sneering nobles day after day, of being forever caught between two worlds, made her tremble. I don't know what to say," she managed. "Finally, say you will trust me," Adrian replied. "That is all I ask for now. Trust that I will protect you, whatever comes." Before Elena could respond, they heard the first stirrings of the kitchen staff arriving for their morning duties. Adrian stepped back quickly, resuming a more formal bearing. "Think on what I have said," he murmured. "I will find a way to speak with you again soon." With a slight bow, he turned and vanished through a side door just as the first, sleepy-eyed servants entered the kitchen. Elena returned to her bread-making, her movements automatic, as her mind whirled with possibilities both wonderful and terrifying. As the kitchen filled with the usual morning bustle, she reached up to touch the wooden cross at her neck, the one her mother had given her before she died. "Lord," she whispered, so quietly none could hear. Guide my heart. Show me the path I should take. The cross felt warm under her fingers, smooth from years of similar prayers. But never had she needed guidance more desperately than now, caught between a prince's protection and a kingdom's scorn, between her humble past and an unimaginable future. The morning sun climbed higher, sending bright shafts of light through the kitchen windows. Around her, the day's work began in earnest, kettles clanking, fires being stoked, voices calling out instructions. Elena shaped her loaves with trembling hands, each one a prayer for wisdom, for courage, for the strength to face whatever path lay ahead. The afternoon sun beat down on the palace gardens, making the ornate fountain sparkle like scattered diamonds. Elena moved carefully between the gathered nobles, her plain dress a stark contrast to their rainbow of silks and brocades. The silver wine tray felt heavier with each step, as she navigated around the strutting peacocks that roamed the manicured lawns. "Wine, my ladies," she offered quietly, approaching a group of noble women who lounged beneath a white marble pergola. Their powdered wigs towered impossibly high, adorned with ribbons and fake birds that bobbed with each movement. Lady Isolde, the Countess of Weimar, turned slowly to face her. The Countess's painted lips curved into a cruel smile. "Well, if it isn't the prince's baker's wench," she drawled, loud enough for all to hear. "Tell me, girl, do you still smell of yeast and common flour?" Titters erupted from the surrounding ladies. Elena's cheeks burned, but she kept her eyes lowered and her hands steady on the tray. "Would you care for some wine, my lady?" "Oh, do let her serve us," Isolde, another noblewoman, called out. "After all, she may be our future queen." This brought fresh peals of laughter. Lady Isolde selected a crystal goblet from Elena's tray with exaggerated care. "I wonder," she mused, "if our dear prince knows what sport he has created? Though I suppose any man might fancy a common doxy for a night's entertainment." Elena's fingers tightened on the tray's handles. "My lady does me wrong," she said softly. "I am no such thing." "No?" Lady Isolde's eyes glittered dangerously. "Then pray tell us, what are you? A servant who dares to reach above her station? A peasant who thinks fine clothes might hide the dirt beneath her nails?" Before Elena could respond, Lady Isolde's hand slipped, sending dark red wine cascading down the front of Elena's dress. "Oh, how clumsy of me," the Countess said with mock concern, "but perhaps it is for the best. Red suits you better than white ever could." The other ladies laughed openly now as Elena stood frozen, wine dripping from her skirts. The silver tray trembled in her grip as she fought back tears. "My dear ladies," a familiar voice cut through the laughter, "I trust you are enjoying the afternoon's refreshments." Prince Adrian appeared beside Elena, his presence immediately silencing the tittering nobles. They dropped into deep curtsies, faces composed into masks of innocence. "Your Highness," Lady Isolde purred, "we were just discussing the unusual events of last night's festivities." "Indeed?" Adrian's voice was perfectly controlled, but Elena heard the steel beneath its surface. "Then you must have noted how gracefully Mistress Elena conducted herself, despite being thrust unexpectedly into the spotlight. Such dignity speaks well of her character, does it not?" Lady Isolde's smile faltered slightly. "Of course, Your Highness, though some might say dignity alone does not make a suitable match for. Some might do better to mind their own affairs," Adrian interrupted smoothly. He turned to Elena, his manner gentle. "Mistress Elena, you appear to have met with an accident. Please, allow me to escort you to Lady Agnes. She will help you change into something more comfortable." Elena curtsied, careful not to let the wine drip from her dress onto his fine boots. "You are too kind, Your Highness." As Adrian led her away from the gathered nobles, Elena glimpsed a figure watching from the chapel arcade. Archbishop Matthias, his weathered face thoughtful as he observed their interaction. The elderly cleric's eyes seemed to see straight through to her soul, measuring something she could not name. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of whispers and sidelong glances. By evening, Elena's dress had been cleaned as best it could be, though a faint stain remained like the mark of shame Lady Isolde intended it to be. In the great hall that night, Elena served at the high table, where King Ulrich held court over the evening meal. She kept her eyes down, trying to make herself invisible as she filled wine cups and removed empty plates. but she could not help hearing the conversation that unfurled above her head. "Come now, my son," King Ulrich's voice carried clearly, though his words were slightly slurred by wine. "Surely you see the humor has run its course. The Duchess of Northmark's daughter would make a far more suitable match. Pretty little thing, and her dowry would fund 3 new warships." "Father." Adrian's tone was respectful but firm. "You gave your word before the entire court. Unless you wish to be known as an oath-breaker. Careful, boy." The king's voice dropped dangerously. "My word was given in jest, as all understood. Unless bans are read or a special license secured by Sunday next, this foolishness expires. You will wed where I command, for the good of the realm." "And if bans were read?" Adrian asked quietly. "If the archbishop himself were to—" "Enough!" The king's fist crashed down on the table, making the silverware jump. "You are my son and heir. You will do your duty to this kingdom, not throw yourself away on some common." Elena hurried from the hall, unable to bear hearing herself discussed like cattle at market. She took refuge in the servants' passageway, pressing her forehead against the cool stone wall. From around the corner, she heard voices approaching 2 noble ladies she recognized from their distinctive perfumes. "It must be done before Sunday," one whispered urgently. "Once her reputation is ruined, even the prince cannot save her." "Leave it to me," the other replied. "I know just the man. A few coins to tell the right tale about our little baker's daughter, and she'll be back in the gutter where she belongs." Elena held her breath until their footsteps faded, then sagged against the wall. Above, in his private chambers, Prince Adrian stood at his window, gazing out at the moonlit gardens. A single candle cast his shadow long across the floor, as he contemplated the battle ahead, not just against his father's will, but against the entire weight of custom and class that threatened to crush this fragile dream before it could take root. The candlelight flickered, and somewhere in the distance, a church bell tolled the hour. Time was running out for them both. The morning sun streamed through the tall library windows, casting golden patterns across rows of leather-bound books. Elena stood nervously just inside the heavy oak door, her plain dress and apron marking her as clearly out of place among the scholarly treasures. "Come," Prince Adrian beckoned from beside a reading desk. "No one will disturb us here at this hour." Elena glanced anxiously over her shoulder. "Your Highness, servants aren't permitted." "You are not here as a servant," Adrian said firmly. "You are here as my betrothed, and you must learn certain things, if we are to succeed." He gestured to a chair, but Elena remained standing, twisting her hands in her apron. "I fear I'll only disappoint you, Your Highness. I can barely read, let alone act like a proper lady." Adrian's expression softened. "Then we shall begin with the basics. First, you must stop calling me Your Highness when we're alone." "Adrian will do." "Adrian," Elena whispered, as if testing the name on her tongue. It felt strange, almost forbidden. "Now, the curtsy." He demonstrated the proper positioning. The right foot behind the left, bend at the knees, while keeping your back straight. Elena attempted to mirror his movements, wobbling slightly. Adrian shook his head. "No, like this." He stepped behind her, his hands gentle on her shoulders. Back straight, chin lifted. "You are not unworthy, remember that." The warmth of his hands through her dress made Elena's cheeks flush. She tried again, this time maintaining her balance. "Better," Adrian smiled. "Much better. Now, the fan." He produced an ornate silk fan from his coat. "This was my mother's. A lady's fan is not merely for cooling. It is a language all its own." Elena took the delicate object reverently. "It's beautiful," she breathed, running her fingers over the painted scenes. "Hold it thus," Adrian demonstrated. "To flutter it rapidly means excitement. To draw it across your cheek signals interest. To close it sharply shows displeasure," Elena suggested, mimicking the motion with surprising grace. Adrian's eyebrows rose. "Exactly right. You're more observant than you let on." "One learns to watch carefully in the kitchens," Elena said. "The way nobles hold themselves, speak, move. It tells us their moods, whether to approach or stay away." Adrian nodded thoughtfully. "And now for some basic French. Every lady at court must know at least a few phrases." "French?" Elena's eyes widened in alarm. "Begin with bonjour, good day," Adrian pronounced carefully. Elena repeated the word, her accent clumsy but earnest. They continued with simple phrases. "Please, "Thank you, good evening." Though she struggled, her determination never wavered. To Adrian's surprise, Elena proved a quick study. She asked intelligent questions about court customs and protocol, displaying a sharp mind beneath her humble manner. "Your turn to teach me," Adrian said after an hour of lessons. "I know nothing of common life, of the prayers and songs that comfort ordinary folk." Elena's face lit up. "Truly, you wish to learn?" "I do." She taught him a simple prayer that peasant children learned at their mother's knees. Her clear voice filled the library as she demonstrated. "Blessed saints above us all, guard our hearts from winter's fall. Give us strength to work and pray, keep us safe another day." Adrian repeated the words, touched by their simple faith. Then Elena shared a folk song about harvest time, her voice sweet and pure despite her nervousness. "These songs," she explained, "they make the work lighter. When you're kneading bread before dawn, or picking crops until your back aches, the music reminds you that others share your burden. Tell me more about your work," Adrian urged, genuinely curious. Elena described rising before sunrise to light the ovens, the satisfaction of perfectly baked bread, the joy of sharing warm rolls with hungry children. Her face glowed as she spoke of simple pleasures, the scent of fresh herbs, the warmth of the kitchen hearth, the solidarity among the servants who looked after each other. "You see value in honest labor," Adrian observed, "something many nobles have forgotten." "Every task has dignity," Elena said softly, "if done with care and love." Adrian found himself drawn to her quiet wisdom, her lack of pretense. Here was something real, something true, amid the artificial glitter of court life. The moment was shattered by the library door swinging open. Lady Isolde swept in, her silk skirts rustling like angry whispers. Well, she drawled, taking in the scene before her. "How touching." The prince plays tutor to his little kitchen maid. Elena immediately dropped into a curtsy, but Adrian noted with pride that she maintained the proper form they'd practiced. "Lady Isolde," Adrian's voice was cool. "This is a private lesson." "Oh, indeed." Isolde's painted lips curved in a cruel smile. "Teaching her to pass for something she's not? How futile." She circled Elena, like a cat stalking prey. "You can dress her in silk, teach her French phrases, but she'll never be one of us. The court will never accept her." "The court will accept what I choose," Adrian said firmly. "Will they?" Isolde's eyes glittered. "Think carefully, Your Highness. Your father's patience grows thin. The nobles whisper of scandal. How long before they question your fitness to rule? If you persist in this infatuation." "Is that a threat, my lady?" "Merely a friendly warning." Isolde's gaze raked over Elena dismissively. "Better to end this folly now, before you lose everything for the sake of a common servant who can barely read." Elena stood silent, head bowed, but Adrian saw her hands trembling. "You forget yourself," he said coldly. "Leave us." "As you wish." Isolde paused at the door. "But remember, a prince who would throw away his throne for a baker's daughter may find himself with neither crown nor bride in the end." The door closed behind her with a heavy thud. Elena's composure finally broke, tears sliding down her cheeks. "She's right," she whispered. "I can never be what you need." Adrian reached for her hand, but she pulled away. "I should go. The kitchen will need me." She fled before he could stop her, leaving only the faint scent of bread and herbs behind. That night, Elena lay awake in her narrow bed in the servants' dormitory. The rough wool blanket scratched her skin as she listened to the quiet sounds of night. Mice scurrying in the walls, the distant toll of the cathedral bell, the soft breathing of other maids. "Elena?" A whisper came from the next bed. "Are you awake?" It was Mary, one of the younger kitchen maids, who had always been kind to her. "Yes," Elena whispered back. "Is it true what they say, that Prince Adrian means to marry you truly, not just in jest?" Elena was silent for a long moment. "He says he will try." "You're very brave," Mary said softly. "Standing up to the likes of Lady Isolde, learning noble ways. Some of us, well, we admire you for it." "I'm not brave," Elena answered. "I'm terrified. But you go on anyway. That's what makes it brave." There was a rustle of blankets as Mary turned toward her. "Will you teach me that new curtsy you learned? In case things change for all of us?" Elena smiled in the darkness, touching the wooden cross at her throat. "Tomorrow," she promised. "I'll show you tomorrow." The mice continued their midnight wanderings as the two maids finally drifted off to sleep, one dreaming of dance steps and fan language, the other of a world where worth was measured by character rather than birth. The palace ballroom blazed with hundreds of beeswax tapers, their golden light reflecting off gilt mirrors and crystal chandeliers. Violins played a gentle minuet as nobles in their finest silks and brocades swept across the polished floor. Elena stood at the entrance, her borrowed blue gown feeling strange against her skin, her heart pounding like a drum. Prince Adrian appeared at her side, resplendent in deep burgundy velvet and gold braid. "Remember," he murmured, offering his arm, "you have every right to be here." Elena slipped her trembling hand into the crook of his elbow. "The nobles will not think so, Your Highness." "Then let them see how a true lady carries herself, regardless of birth." His warm smile gave her courage. They entered the ballroom together. Conversation stuttered and died. Fans snapped open to hide whispers. Ladies turned their backs. Gentlemen raised eyebrows, but none dared openly challenge a prince of the realm. Adrian led Elena through the crowd, making formal introductions as protocol demanded. "Lady Clarence, may I present Mistress Elena?" Each noble was forced to acknowledge her with stiff bows or shallow curtsies, though their eyes remained cold. "The Duke of Westbrook, Mistress Elena." An elderly man in purple silk barely inclined his head. "Your Grace," Elena responded, executing the curtsy she had practiced so diligently. She kept her spine straight, her chin lifted, though her knees shook beneath her skirts. The violins began a new tune. Adrian turned to her with a formal bow. "May I have this dance?" Elena's mouth went dry. They had practiced the basic steps in secret, but here, before everyone. "Trust me," Adrian whispered, leading her to the center of the floor. Other couples drew back, leaving them alone in a circle of watching eyes. Elena focused on Adrian's encouraging smile as he took her hand. The music swelled. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Elena moved carefully, counting each step in her head. She stumbled slightly on a turn, but Adrian's strong hand at her waist steadied her. "You're doing beautifully," he murmured. "Keep your eyes on mine." Looking into his warm gaze, Elena found her rhythm. The steps came more naturally now. For a precious moment, the sneering faces around them faded away. There was only the music, the dance, and Adrian's tender expression as he guided her across the floor. From his place near the musicians' gallery, Archbishop Matthias watched the couple intently. He noted how the prince supported Elena with gentle patience, how she responded with genuine grace despite her nervousness. There was no artifice in her manner, no scheming behind her shy smiles. Perhaps, he thought, true love deserved blessing regardless of rank. Elena's heart soared as Adrian whirled her through the final turns. For one shining moment, she felt like a real lady, cherished and admired by her prince. His eyes held hers with such warmth that she could almost believe their pretense was reality. The spell shattered at a thunderous voice from the doorway. "What is this nonsense?" The music screeched to a halt. Dancers froze mid-step. King Ulrich stood in the entrance, his face dark with rage as he surveyed the scene. "So," he growled, striding forward, "my son makes a mockery of his position by dancing with servants." Fear rippled through the assembly. Nobles drew back, leaving Elena and Adrian isolated in the center of the floor. Elena's legs trembled so badly she could barely remain standing. The king's voice cut through the terrible silence. "Let it be known to all, this farce will end soon." His cold eyes fixed on Elena. Very soon indeed. The once bright ballroom seemed to dim. The violins remained silent. Elena felt the weight of hundreds of hostile stares as her beautiful dream crumbled around her. The chapel bells tolled the hour as morning light filtered through stained glass windows. Elena knelt before the altar, tears sliding silently down her cheeks as she prayed. Prince Adrian stood protectively beside her, his hand resting on the worn wooden pew. Archbishop Matthias approached with measured steps, his robes rustling against the stone floor. He studied them both, noting Elena's genuine devotion and Adrian's steadfast presence. "In all my years at court," the archbishop said softly, "I have never witnessed such true humility." He clasped his hands before him. "I shall consider granting a special license for your union." Elena's heart leaped. Such a license would make their marriage binding, jest or no jest. "Thank you, Your Grace," she whispered, crossing herself. "God is merciful," Adrian helped her to her feet. "I swear I will fight for you, Elena, no matter what comes." But even as hope bloomed in the chapel, darkness stirred elsewhere. In her chambers, Lady Isolde penned a poisonous letter to the king, revealing how Elena's father once stole grain during the Great Famine. Her quill scratched with malicious satisfaction as she sealed it with wax. The letter soon found its way to a servant, who carried it with swift steps to King Ulrich's private chamber. The king broke the seal, read the contents, and smiled darkly. At last, here was the weapon he needed to destroy this inconvenient romance. The midnight hour struck as Prince Adrian entered the royal council chamber. Shadows danced on the walls from flickering torches as King Ulrich sat behind his massive oak desk. The malicious letter spread before him. "So, you wish to wed this baker's daughter?" The king's voice dripped with contempt. "Let me tell you about her treasonous family. Her father, this Master Roderick, once stole grain from our royal storehouse during the famine. He fed it to peasants like common rats." Adrian's face paled. "Father, surely during a famine." "Silence." The king slammed his fist down. "If you proceed with this farce of a marriage, I will have her entire family imprisoned and executed for treason. Choose, my son, your throne or this peasant girl." Adrian stumbled from the chamber, devastated. As dawn broke, Elena approached with fresh bread for the morning council meeting. Through the heavy door, she caught fragments of two nobles discussing the night's events. Her heart turned to ice. She had brought only shame and danger to the prince she loved. There was only one way to save him now. In the gray light of dawn, Elena gathered her meager belongings into a small bundle. With trembling fingers, she removed the wooden cross from her neck, clutching it tightly as she slipped away from the palace gates. Elena's feet ached with every step along the muddy country road. The morning mist clung to her shawl as she trudged forward, leaving behind the grand palace and her shattered dreams. Her wooden cross bounced against her chest with each weary step, a reminder of prayers unanswered. After 2 long days of walking, blisters burning on her feet, she finally glimpsed the familiar thatched roofs of her village. The sight brought both relief and fresh pain to her heart. "Elena, child, what has happened?" her mother cried, running to embrace her. Other villagers gathered, faces etched with concern as Elena told a careful version of events, hiding the depth of her heartbreak behind a brave smile. In the days that followed, she threw herself into work beside her mother, kneading dough and tending the ovens as she had before the palace changed everything. Meanwhile at the palace, Prince Adrian's fury knew no bounds upon discovering her departure. He ordered his fastest carriage prepared, paying no heed to his father's satisfied smirk. For 3 days, the carriage jolted over rutted roads as Adrian pressed on, determined to find her. One evening, as Elena carried water from the village well, a familiar figure strode into the square. The wooden bucket slipped from her grasp, water splashing at her feet as she gasped. There stood Adrian, travel, worn but resolute, his eyes fixed upon her face. The morning sun streamed through the village church's stained glass windows as Adrian stood before Elena, his eyes pleading. "Please, return with me. We can face anything together." Elena shook her head, tears threatening. "I cannot risk my family's safety, Your Highness." The church door creaked open, and gasps rippled through the gathered villagers as Archbishop Matthias entered, his robes dusty from travel. He took his place at the humble wooden pulpit and began the Mass, his gentle voice filling the small space. "Today we speak of Christ feeding the hungry," he said, his wise eyes sweeping the congregation. "Of mercy, and of justice." One by one, villagers rose to testify. "Master Roderick saved our children," declared an old woman, her voice strong. "The royal storehouse burst with grain while we starved." The nobles who had accompanied Adrian shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Lady Margaret, a duchess, stood first. "This match has my support," she announced. Others nodded, murmuring agreement. The archbishop raised his hands. "Let it be known, I will bless this union, with or without royal consent. God himself sanctions love born of such noble hearts." Outside, as church bells pealed joyfully, Adrian clasped Elena's trembling hands in his. "Before all these witnesses," he declared, "I vow I would give up throne and crown to keep you by my side." The grand hall of the royal palace blazed with hundreds of beeswax candles, their light reflecting off gilded mirrors and crystal chandeliers. Nobles lined the walls, their silk garments rustling as they whispered among themselves. At the center of the vast chamber, Prince Adrian of Arenthia stood tall, his fingers intertwined with Elena's smaller ones. King Ulrich sat rigid upon his throne, his face dark with displeasure. The archbishop stood nearby, his gentle presence a counterweight to the monarch's anger. Adrian's clear voice rang through the hushed hall. "If she is not worthy to be my bride, then I am not worthy to be your prince." His grip on Elena's hand tightened as he continued. "I freely offer to renounce my claim to the throne." Gasps echoed through the chamber. Elena's heart pounded, but she held her head high, drawing strength from Adrian's unwavering devotion. The archbishop stepped forward, his robes sweeping the marble floor. "Love that inspires such sacrifice deserves heaven's blessing," he declared. Raising his hands over the couple, he spoke the ancient words of blessing, his voice carrying to every corner of the vast hall. King Ulrich's fingers whitened on his throne's armrests as he surveyed the scene before him. Noble houses who had never before united now stood together, their support for the couple evident in their stern faces. Village folk who had traveled to witness this moment filled the back of the hall, their honest presence a reminder of the kingdom's true foundation. The clergy, led by the archbishop, stood resolute, the king's jaw clenched. To deny this union now would cost him more than his pride could bear. With visible effort, he rose. "So be it," he pronounced, his voice cold but clear. "Let it never be said that Arenthia's king stands against love." The last word came out strained, but it was enough. Joy erupted through the hall. The wedding ceremony that followed was unlike any in Arenthia's history. Simple village traditions mixed with royal pageantry, as Elena had insisted on honoring both their worlds. Common folk and nobles alike watched as their prince wed his baker's daughter, their union blessed by both church and crown. Weeks passed, and summer mellowed toward autumn. In Elena's home village, the evening air carried the scent of ripening apples and fresh baked bread as she walked the familiar paths with Adrian. Her husband now, she thought with quiet joy, watching him greet villagers with genuine warmth. Children ran from their games to crowd around them, offering wildflower bouquets to Elena and peppering Adrian with questions about palace life. The prince answered each one patiently, his royal bearing softened by genuine affection for these little ones. Villagers bowed as they passed, but their greetings held warmth rather than formality. "Good evening, my lord and lady," called the blacksmith, his smile genuine. Others nodded respectfully, but their eyes held pride. This was their Elena, who had won a prince's heart without losing her own true nature. Adrian paused in the village square, bringing Elena's hand to his lips in a gesture that married courtly grace with honest tenderness. In that moment, titles fell away. They stood together not as prince and peasant, but as husband and wife, living proof that love could bridge any divide, even in the rigid world of Arenthia. Thank you for watching. Stories like this remind us who we are. If something touched your heart, go ahead and subscribe. I'll be back tomorrow with another story that just might stay with you.